everyone, welcome back. My name's Diana. This is my channel Bookish Di, and today I'm doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So this is a tag that's commonly done around the midpoint of the year on BookTube. I'll link the originals down below. I do believe one of them is private, but this is a staple. I've done it several times, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about what I've read so far, since 2023 has actually been a fantastic year for me at this point. I read 72 books through the start of the year, and that's really close to my goal of reading 75 books total for the year. It's not far off from how many books I've read the last few years. And yeah, I'm actually really pleasantly surprised with how well my reading's been doing this year. There have been some really great books. There's also been a few misses as well. So yeah, let's get into it. The first question is, what's the best book that you've read so far in 2023? And I'm going to do two, one fiction, one nonfiction. So the nonfiction book is How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith III. This is a narrative nonfiction book that looks at several sites throughout America that have been impacted by slavery and the use of enslaved persons. And so Clint Smith goes to visit them. He goes to Monticello, he goes to Galveston, Texas, where Juneteenth, the Emancipation Proclamation was read that led to the holiday of Juneteenth. He goes to Angola Prison in Louisiana, as well as a walking tour centering enslaved people in New York City. And it is just this absolutely fantastic piece of work. It's absolutely beautiful and heartbreaking. I listened to the audiobook, and Clint Smith does the narration, and he did a fantastic job. This is honestly probably the best book that I've read so far this year, and it's absolutely stunning. I read it because Monty Ness at My Name is Monty Ness had talked about it and said that it was fantastic, and I was in the mood for nonfiction, so I picked it up. And I would highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in learning more about American history and how entangled slavery and the use of enslaved people has been from its founding through the present day, as he discusses with Angola Prison. The best fiction book that I read this year was actually one of the first books that I read, and that was The Blue Castle by Ella Montgomery. So I don't know if it's the best written, but it's the best of my feelings. So this follows a young woman, Valency Sterling, who lives with her family, her mom and her cousin, and she's the unfavorite of her family. She's looked down upon, and the only kind of consolation that she has are these natural science books. And she has kind of a heart murmur, and she goes to the doctor, and he's like, oh, you only have a year to live. And it leads her to kind of seizing the day, and she enters into a marriage of convenience. And it's just, I loved it. It was delightful. I am mostly familiar with Ella Montgomery through the Anne of Green Gables books, although I have read and loved Jane of Lantern Hill. And this is one of her rare books for adults, and it's so good. It has persuasion vibes, and I really enjoyed it. It made me so happy. And yeah, it's one, if you're looking for just kind of a gentle, funny read, I would really recommend it. Question number 2 is, what's the best sequel that you've read so far in 2023? So I haven't been doing a great job of reading series this year, despite having a series TBR, but the one that I did read and I did finish, which I will talk about in my June wrap-up, was the Kingston Cycle, and the best sequel that I read was the final book, Soul Star by C.L. Polk. So this is the culmination of the events that have gone through Witchmark and Storm Song, and in this book we get the point of view of Robin, who we meet in Witchmark as a nurse, and we find out what her secret is, and the fact that she is a woman who has been campaigning to end the Witch Protection Act, I think it's what it's called, which basically imprisons people who are suspected of witchcraft in these asylums throughout the kingdom of Aeland. And it has some commentary with enslavement and reparations and forced labor. And in this book, we get kind of the culmination of everything that's happened in terms of character arcs in terms of trying to change Aelin for the better and what does that look like, as well as a really beautiful love story between Robin and their spouse who had been imprisoned. And it was just, this was such a fantastic conclusion. I think this definitely is a series that I'm going to reread. I think it'll be something that I get a lot out of on a reread. And I will also say I listened to the audiobook of this, and Robin Miles does the narration, and it is absolutely fantastic. Would highly recommend both this book, but in order to do so, you should read the Kingston Cycle. Question 3 is, what's a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to? And there's a number of them, but the one that I absolutely really want to read is Witch King by Martha Wells. This is her new fantasy book. I have the very pretty Illumicrate edition, and I need to read it. I've heard good things. I've heard some not so good things. So I'm kind of keeping my expectations low, but yeah, I really love Murderbot. I read the first book of her Rexura series years and years ago, and I remember enjoying it. So I'm very interested to see what she does with this, because I think I talked about it in the Station Bitch with Kelsey, but this definitely feels like the book that she wrote after watching The Untamed. So yeah, I'm hopefully going to get to it in the next month or so. Question 4 is, what's your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And who would I be if I didn't say a October Day book? And I'm choosing both of them. So Sleep No More and The Innocent Sleep, both by Shauna McGuire. These are books 17 and 18 in the October Day series, and book 7, and they're both dealing with the aftermath of Be the Serpent and what happened there and the cliffhanger there. But what I'm really looking forward to is the fact that The Innocent Sleep, we are getting an entire book from Tybalt's perspective. And I can't really talk about the plot because it is 16 books worth of plot to get to this point. But I need to know how that cliffhanger is going to resolve and what it means for our characters moving forward and what changes are going to be happening long term. And yeah, I cannot wait for these books. Early September and early October, I am just going to be an anxious mess waiting to get these into my hands. Question 5 is, what was your biggest disappointment? And that was Gunmetal Magic by Alona Andrews. This isn't a bad book. It was a 3-star, so it's not terrible, but it was a disappointment because the Kate Daniels series have been except for book 6, which I will talk about in my June wrap-up, have been hit after hit after hit for me, and I've been really enjoying them. And I really liked Magic Morns, which was the novella that we got from Andrea's perspective, and this was just kind of a mess. So this book picks up fairly shortly after book 5 in the Kay Daniels book, and we're following Andrea, who used to be a Knight of the Order of Merciful Aid and has been kicked out because it was discovered she was beastkin. So her father was a hyena wearer, so a hyena who could become human, and her mother was a Buddha, so a woman who could become a hyena, and she's seen as kind of this abomination by a lot of shifters. And it's a lot of her processing her trauma and kind of finding her place in the pack after being dismissed from the order. My problem with this was some of the characterization of Andrea just felt really inconsistent, as well as the characterization of Raphael, who's her love interest. I also had an issue with the pacing, particularly towards the end. And this is something that I've noticed with a lot of Alona Andrew books, where you have a very, very quick climax and conclusion. And it was pretty egregious in this one. And it wasn't up to my normal standards for the Kay Daniels books. So that's why this is my biggest disappointment. I had been really looking forward to it because, like I said, I really loved Magic Morns. I've been really enjoying the Kay Daniels series, and this just did not hit for me. Next is question 6. What was your biggest surprise? And I'm using this in a derogatory sense. So what was your biggest surprise in the worst way? And that was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I had picked this up because Bethany at Beautifully Bookish Bethany had raved about it, said it was tropey goodness, it was so good, it was one of her favorites of the year. And then some folks in Money Ness's Discord read it and were like, what is this? This is a mess. And so I was I had been looking for, like, I had put the book on hold at the library and I read it, and it is a mess. It is just poorly written, poorly edited. It's like the author decided to reverse engineer a romantasy book that would hit big on TikTok. And you can tell the themes show, the characters have no depth. We're told about things that aren't backed up by the text. Even the enemies to lovers aspect just is garbage and paper thin at best. The fact that they're at war, but they're just so willing to kill infantry members and dragon riders, like, nothing about this book makes sense. And the fandom around it is also just, I don't understand why people are going to the mat so hard for this book, because, like, you'll see people just go defend this book so vehemently, and nothing about this book is worth defending so hard. And yeah, it's just not a good book. The fandom's a mess. And the fact that a woman who is known for writing military romances wrote this book, I think should say something. And I think it also is going to lead to some really messy things around book 2 when that comes out in November. So yeah, biggest surprise, derogatory, is Fourth Wing. Question 7 is favorite new author. And this is a little difficult for me just because, like, for me, a new favorite author is a book where I will go out of my way to read more of their things. And so I'm choosing an author who I read before, but who this year I ended up reading most of their backlist, and that's going to be C.L. Polk. I read, even though I knew the end, early this year. I really loved it. I read Soulstar, the Kingston Cycle, this past month, and it really hit for me. I loved the series. I love the commentary that Polk was making about change and complicity and allies versus accomplice. And what does it look like to actually do the work? And what does it look like to actually affect change? And how does that impact the person or the people who are working for that change? And yeah, the Kingston Cycle is actually probably one of my favorite series, I think. And so yeah, C.L. Polk, like, I have The Midnight Bargain still that I need to read, and I'm hoping to read that this year. But yeah, at this point, I would say the author who has transitioned from, I enjoy their work, because I had read Witchmark several years ago and then just never finished the series, to I will read everything this author has written, is C.L. Polk. 8, I'm gonna skip because it's who's your new fictional crush, and I don't really get book crushes. Like, that whole thing is just so foreign to me. I'm just gonna go to new favorite character, and that's Kate Daniels. I love her. She is everything I want in an urban fantasy protagonist. She's snarky, she cares a lot, she's really good with a sword. I love how much she just kind of adopts people and makes them hers. And I'm really enjoying making my way through this series, and I love Kate so much. She's such a great character, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to giving this series another chance. Question 10 is book that made you cry, and this is also difficult for me because I'm not really that much of a crier when I read. So I'm gonna shift this a little to book that made you feel all the things. And that for me is How Far the Light Reaches by Sabrina Imbler. This is memoir / science nonfiction where Imbler uses 10 sea creatures to kind of talk about their own life. So for example, they talk about well necropsy to do a necropsy on a relationship that failed in the past. They talk about the fact that octopuses will lay eggs and starve themselves to death, preventing it to talk about their relationship with their mother and their weight. They talk about sturgeon that live in China to talk about her grandmother. And some of these essays hit more than others for me, but overall this is a fantastic collection, and it was very emotional and very impactful for me, and I'm glad I read it. This was probably one of my favorite pieces of nonfiction that I've read this year. And I've since read some other work that Imbler's written, because I don't know if they're a guest writer or a feature writer, but they do some writing for for Defector, which is a website founded by former Deadspin staff, and I really like their work there. Question 11 is book that made you happy, and that is Chris and Devon Plan a Wedding by Tensia C. Higgins. This is a sapphic Black romance that follows Chris and Devon, who are on a reality show where they have 6 weeks to convince their respective families that they're dating, and they can only tell one person that it isn't real. And Chris and Devon get assigned to each other and they hit it off, and I love this book. This book just it had me like clutching my face and being like, oh my god, this is so great, this is so great. I love the relationship between Chris and Devon. I love the relationships between them and their respective families. I loved how the ending plan came out, and yeah, I could see you complaining like, oh, the reality show is too nice, but you know what, I don't care. This was such a wonderful, wonderful romance book, and it's probably my favorite romance of the year. It's just so good, so lovely. It made me so happy while reading it, and I desperately need a new book by Tensia C. Higgins because this was amazing. Question 12 is, what's the most beautiful book that you've bought this year? And I have a few very pretty books because I've been doing Illumicrate and Fairy Loot, and they've been doing some great ones. But my favorite, and I think truly the most beautiful one, is the Illumicrate Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi. Like, we got beautiful foiling on the cover. We have these amazing sprayed edges. We have, we have beautiful foiling on the naked hardback. And these end papers have foil and illustrations. Like, there's Amina, there's a cat. So I still need to read this, but this is definitely my favorite of the editions that Fairy Loot or Illumicrate has done this year. It's just absolutely gorgeous on every single level. The last question, question 13, is what books do you need to finish before the end of the year? And the answer is so many. My main goal is to read Hugo nominees. So as I'm recording this, the Hugo nominees have just been announced, and I do need to read a number of the best novel finalists, the best novella finalists, best series, Lodestar, Astounding. There's just so many books I need to read. I'm gonna try and prioritize them and see like how many I can get through before voting closes at the end of September. But yeah, those I'm gonna try and focus on, as well as finishing the Dandelion Dynasty, because those are two giant ass books, and I would like the accomplishment of finishing them both before the end of the year. So that's my mid-year book freakout tag. Like I said, I've read a lot of good things. This isn't even getting into some of my other favorites of the year. The worst book of the year, which is Akatar. So yeah, have you done this tag? Do you have a best book that you've read so far this year? Is there anything you're looking forward to? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoy what you see, please like and subscribe, and I will talk with you later. Bye.